got through the Canary Islands, how their experience is our background as Dominicans because they are our big brother. Now I'm going to cover the beginnings of the transatlantic slave trade because many of us are confused with the American version. And even though all slavery in the Americas started the same way, which is what we're going to cover, it didn't all begin at the same time. So here's a quick timeline of the slave trade. So 1480s, the Portuguese populate their island colonies off the coast of Western Africa, largely with enslaved Black Africans. The Portuguese also take many African captives back to Portugal. In the 1500s, we have Spain and Portugal establishing colonies. In the 1600s, we have the Dutch, English, and French establishing colonies. And then August 1619, we have the first Africans in English America are brought to the Jamestown colony in Virginia. But something that we have to understand about slavery is that there's different kinds of slavery. The American version is the one that most of us here heard and know about, which is chattel slavery. So this form of slavery, chattel slavery, means the following. It is a system which allows people to be considered legal property. That means that they could be bought and sold and owned forever, for their whole lives. This form of slavery was not actually common before the American slave trade began. But the United States and most European powers began to support this form of slavery and continued to support it between the 16th and the 18th centuries. This article here from Time magazine from August 20, 2019 by Olivia B. Waxman explains in the blue, it says, laws on lifetime slavery, including the law that said children of enslaved mothers are slaves, didn't start to appear until the late 17th century and early 18th century. So the other form of slavery that was much more common and is even spoken about in the Bible is called indentured servitude. So indentured servitude was basically that you signed a contract saying, I'm going to work for you for free for X number of years. And usually people did this in order to come over to the New World or to the Americas. They would willingly go into this contract where they became slaves for a certain number of years. The slave plantation of Zephaniah Kingsley in the Dominican Republic was an example of that. He originally immigrated to the colonies in the 1700s and then eventually ended up in the Dominican Republic. He owned several indentured servants of dark skin who eventually were granted their freedom. Mind you, he also had regular chattel slavery as well, included in his mix of commercial endeavors and whatnot. He wasn't a cool dude, that's what I'm trying to say. But when chattel slavery was being threatened, he used indentured slavery in order to continue to practice slavery on his plantations. The point being that there was so many different forms of slavery that they were able to use to continue to keep people in bondage. Another form was bonded slavery, which is basically very similar to indentured servitude, where the person is paying off something. It's a form of debt slavery. This continues to this day. People are still being enslaved